This is a nice dish of monkfish, which is a lovely meaty fish. It's one that a lot of people like because there's not a lot of bone in the actual meat itself. Its correct name is actually an anglerfish. And it's a nice lean meaty fish, almost often compared to prawns, things like that. But again, as with most of these dishes, it'll work with any fish. And you know, you can just play around yourself and see what's the main best fish is always the freshest. Now, I'm also going to just pair that with some new potatoes, which are just lightly covered in water. Just little baby potatoes, they're the easiest. You can buy these in any place. I've lightly covered them in water, pinch of salt, and just boil them till tender. That's your first job. While they're cooking away, you can do the rest of this dish. What I'm making is a little kind of chimichurri sauce. Kind of a green, slightly spicy sauce, originated Argentina, but you'll find variations of this sauce all over the place, from sauce vierge, around the French have to the Arabic zog and things like that. So it's a great sauce because because you're not cooking your herbs, you're getting the full nutritional benefit from them, which is always a good thing. Very important to use a good quality olive oil in this one as well. And traditionally it's a little lemon juice or red wine vinegar they'll use in this. I actually like white rice wine vinegar. I think it gives a lovely mellowness to the dish. So another thing is, you could make this sauce in a food processor, just liquidize the whole thing up. But I actually find the old-fashioned mortar and pestle does a great job, because you're getting the oils out of the herbs by just grinding, cold grinding, and it just tends to do a better job. I'm going to use, when you're using a mortar and pestle, you want to use a slight grainier salt. The one I'm going to use is one that's from Ackle Island. It's a really good quality sea salt. And that's the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop that and make my sauce here to give it a little chance to infuse before I cook the rest of the dish. So I'm just going to put a pinch of this sea salt in and put 3 cloves of garlic. And then I'm just at the same going to use, now I'm using a lot of chili in this. I like chili. You don't have to use nearly as much. Completely up to yourself. Also, it's up to yourself if you'd like to remove the seeds or not. I keep the seeds in. I think they're easy. There's no big problem. And I'm just going to pop them in as well. Next up, I have a selection of herbs. Now, you might be able to get these herbs. I have a nice herb garden. I'm lucky. So if you only could get basil, only parsley, just any will do. But obviously, the more different herbs you use, the more complex the sauce is going to be. So it's what you can get. Use the softer herbs. Rosemary's, things like that can be a little bit dominant. So what I have is some nice fresh oregano, a little bit of marjoram. I have some parsley. And using a pinch of thyme, not much, a lot less than the other herbs, and just a few leaves of basil. And what I'm going to do first of all, before putting them in the pestle, is I'm going to just actually put my garlic here as well and just chop everything up roughly on my chopping board, just to kind of get them started, because obviously the pestle will crush but it won't cut. So you want to just chop these all up, and there's a great smell of herb. So it's get them relatively fine, but not too fine, because you want texture in the sauce. And if you remember, that little bit of salt, what that does is it gives a bit more abrasion on the pestle as you're actually crushing. So you probably can't see that, but that's them all just roughly chopped up. You don't have to be fancy, you don't have to be meticulous in this. Then we're just going to add them all into this little gadget. A little bit of salt in there already. Just wash my hands a little. And then we're just going to start crushing those. Until you break it down into a nice paste. Kind of turning it as you're going, and you'll see it starts to work its way into this lovely kind of a paste. Everything just crushing together, and again, it really does develop the flavour a lot better than you will in the food processor. So, and you really do end up with a much better sauce. And then slowly, as if you're making a mayonnaise or something like that, add about 2 tablespoons of your olive oil in there. Actually, I should have actually added about 2 tablespoons of vinegar first, because the vinegar, 1 tablespoon actually, 1 tablespoon, taste it, and then if it's a bit, needs a little bit more acid, then add another one, don't overdo it. The reason I should have added the vinegar first was because that takes on the flavour and absorbs the salt much better than the oil. Then you start forming this lovely sauce paste. You'll see it just coming together like a really attractive sauce. And then as you crush away, then you will get this really good looking, ready to go chimichurri. And again, experiment with this kind of a sauce. It doesn't take too long to do, but again, I'd strongly recommend using the mortar and pestle as opposed to the food processor, because it does really develop the flavour. It kind of pulls the oil out of the leaves in a much better way that the food processor just doesn't achieve. And that's it. That's all ready, put aside. And then all I have to do now is cook my fish and wait for my potatoes to finish. So the first thing I'm going to do is just wait for my potatoes to cook. Just the normal, you'll stick a spoon in, you'll know yourself when they're cooked. Lightly salted water. At this point, I'm just going to take them off, drain them off, and as my monkfish are cooking, I'll be just cutting those in half. Just in nice big chunks, literally cut in half. And putting them aside but holding them warm. Don't go cooking your fish until your potatoes are cooked. So the next thing I'm going to do is pop my pan, good non-stick pan, onto a nice high heat. I'm going to take my monkfish. Here we go. I'm not seasoning it yet. Oh, first, just a pinch of about a teaspoonful of coconut oil. Move that around your pan a little bit. And then I'm just going to pop my 2 monkfish on the pan. I'll just let them sear away there for a second. It's nice to get a little bit of colour on them, but I also will be using a more moist to cook them, because I don't want to really be damaging any of those nice fats that might be inside the monkfish. And then as they're cooking, I'm just going to prepare my potatoes. So just let those cook away on themselves. If they're a bit splashy, you can pop a lid on it as well. So as my monkfish is just cooking, give it a nice high heat because I have a lid on this as well. Just going to pull that off. Just going to flip those over. Now you're not going to get much colour on this fish because I'm more steaming again. I'm always trying to emphasise when you're trying to avoid frying everything too much. And now at this point, because again you're always trying to protect the EPA, the DHA, those omega-3 fatty acids that are marine, they're very heat sensitive, they don't like to be fried. So at this point, I'm going to put a little bit of salt and pepper. I'll use some of this little Ackle Island sea salt as well, just a little bit on top. You see, that's the big difference between cooking with this kind of anti-inflammatory goal and say the Mediterranean diet. Is Mediterranean will bake, they'll use higher frying type temperatures. So yes, it's a great diet, but when you're specifically looking towards anti-inflammatory, you're trying to watch those cookery temperatures, you know, when you're eating, how you're eating, and so on. So I'm just going to pop that lid on there. I'm going to just put a little drop of water actually into this pan. Again, that's about a tablespoon of water. Just going to cover up that monkfish as well then, and just let that cook away for a few seconds. Now another thing that what I'm going to do now is, as it's cooking, I'm going to just turn off the heat and wait for about 4 minutes, just to let the heat go in and absorb into the monkfish. So I'll just wait about 4 minutes, don't take the lid off the pan. So having allowed my fish to rest in that pan, turned off for about 4 minutes, it's now almost cooked. Now bear in mind that if you're using a fillet, it's going to cook a little bit quicker, because I like cooking my monkfish with a little bit of bone in it. I think it's it just comes together. But as it's starting to pull away from the bone, but not quite. I want it about 70% cooked, let's say. Okay, and now I'm going to add my beans in there. I'm going to pop my heat onto a good high heat. And I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of water in there. Just give a little bit of steam, just to steam through my beans. Okay, that's towards the last minute there. So let that cook away there. Then cover it up and let it cook for about, depending if you like your beans quite cooked or not, I'd say about a minute should do it. At a good high heat at this point. So having waited for about a minute, I'm just going to pull away that. And as you can see, my beans are just nicely cooked through. And again, if you find your pan is a little bit on the dry side, you could just have added a little bit of water as it's cooking. But as you can see, that monkfish is just nicely cooked. Beans have taken on a nice tenderness and colour. And now I'm just going to just cover that up, hold it hot for a minute, and get ready for plating. And I'm just going to turn off my heat as well now, because there's no more cooking required. So to plate this little dish, as I said, that's just the potatoes boiled in very, very lightly salted water and just chopped in half and just left like that. There's my chimichurri, which as you can see is a lovely emulsified sauce, very fresh. And again, you could only use parsley on its own, but again, the more different herbs you're going to use in here, the more complex it's going to become and the better. But again, don't be stressing out as well. The main thing is to, to be playing with your food. People take food a little bit too seriously. Next up, I'm going to just take my piece of monkfish. Just going to pop one piece on there. We want to overstuff ourselves as well. For me, smaller, nice, neat portions are better. I'm going to just mix up my nice beans around there. And just plate it up in such a way. I'm going to take some of my nice chimichurri and just randomly let it drizzle around the whole dish. It's all about freshness. It's a raw sauce. And there we go. Our nice monkfish chimichurri with potatoes and beans. Fresh. And again, sometimes people try to give the old potato a bad rep. It's the chips that have the bad rep, the fried potato dishes. But boiling potatoes in their skin are very, very nutritious and relatively low calorie option. So there's our little piece of monkfish chimichurri with beans and potatoes. Enjoy.